Hello there and good evening. I'm Karim Fazakri and you're watching Wellness Program on All 24 News Channel, live from the capital Algiers. Next up are the headlines. Dozens of Palestinians were killed in new Zionist raids on Gaza. The Gaza state media urges the Trump administration to enforce the ceasefire, while protests sweep across Europe denouncing the ongoing genocide. Coming up next, in Morocco, 1 million people march in Rabat on Al-Aqsa flood anniversary, calling to end normalization. Protests stretch into a second week and spread to Europe as dozens remain jailed amid calls for regime change. Also in our news, the UN reaffirms its push for a political solution in Western Sahara. Rights groups slam Europe's complicity and false labeling of Sahrawi resources. In Spain, fresh lawsuits target the deal seen as plundering the territory's wealth. And in Ukraine, 5 killed in a massive Russian attack. Zelensky calls for a strong response and Putin warns Washington over sending Tomahawk missiles while Poland raises its alert after strikes near its borders. All this and more shortly. Welcome back to the program. It's great to have you with us tonight. First up in our news, medical sources in Gaza say at least 20 Palestinians have been killed and dozens more injured in fresh Zionist attacks since early Sunday. Hospitals in Gaza City, including Al-Shifa and Al-Ma'madani or Baptist Hospital, report receiving 12 bodies after airstrikes hit several homes. Rescue teams are saying they are still trying to reach people trapped under the rubble. 7 others were shot dead while looking for food in central and southern Gaza. And 1 more was killed in an airstrike on the El Boraij refugee camp. In a related story, 7 Palestinians have been killed and others wounded by occupation gunfire in a starvation war on Gaza. Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis received 4 bodies after troops opened the fire near an aid center in Shakush. In central Gaza, Al-Auda Hospital reports 2 more dead and several wounded, including women and children waiting for food south of Wadi Gaza. The health ministry also confirms another death linked to severe malnutrition. In another development, the government media office in Gaza says Zionist forces are continuing their assault despite Trump's call for a ceasefire. They report 93 air and artillery strikes across crowded areas of the Strip, leaving at least 70 Palestinians dead, 47 of them in Gaza City alone. The government media office also urged the U.S. administration to take swift and serious action to stop Israel's crimes and enforce a ceasefire.
The Israeli occupation continues its brutal aggression against the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, disregarding calls for a ceasefire announced by U.S. President Donald Trump, as well as the positive response submitted to the proposal. Since dawn on Saturday, the occupation has carried out more than 93 air and artillery strikes targeting densely populated areas of civilians and displaced persons across various governorates of the Strip, committing clear massacres that have resulted in the deaths of 70 Palestinians, including women and children.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump says a ceasefire in Gaza will take effect once Hamas agrees to the initial withdrawal line. In a post on Truth Social Saturday, Trump urged Hamas to act quickly, warning he won't tolerate any delay or hesitation. He also said a prisoner exchange between Hamas and Israel will take place at the same time the ceasefire begins.
The ceasefire will come into effect once Hamas agrees to the initial withdrawal line. Simultaneously with the implementation of the ceasefire, a prisoner exchange will take place between two sides. Hamas must act quickly or all possibilities will remain on the table.
With just 2 days to go before the second anniversary of the Gaza war, negotiators from both sides are in Egypt discussing the US-backed peace proposal. But many in Gaza remain cautious and far from optimistic. The report is signed by Sufyan Kanturi.
Under makeshift tents, thousands of Palestinian families wait for the bombs to stop falling, for the death toll to stop rising. In Rafah, Deir al-Balah, and Khan Yunis, fear has become a constant companion. Displaced several times since the start of the genocide, many have lost faith in the promises of ceasefires. Even announcements of a truce now inspire more mistrust than hope.
We truly fear that the agreement they're talking about will fail, because every time they reach a solution and announce that truce will be declared, we wake up to a terrible nightmare. We hope to move past this stage, for the truce to take effect and to return to Gaza despite the ruins, despite its destruction, despite everything. We just want the war and the suffering to end, because the people are suffering in every possible way.
Hamas said on Sunday it was ready to reach an agreement to end the genocide and proceeded with an immediate exchange of prisoners with the Zionist occupation. Meanwhile, the occupation army continued its bombardment of the besieged enclave on Saturday, killing at least 57 people, despite calls from US President Donald Trump urging the Zionist entity to immediately halt its aggression against the Palestinian territory.
Trump has welcomed the ceasefire deal. Israel should respond, says it agrees with him on this path. Trump praised Hamas for accepting the plan, yet the bombings continue. You have so far rejected all ceasefire initiative and agreements. Now Trump is proposing a plan to stop all this. Why not implement that plan?
Humanitarian groups describe an unprecedented catastrophe, a genocide, and ethnic cleansing. Words echoed by the horrifying images and numbers of civilians killed, infrastructure destroyed, and entire neighborhoods wiped out. No water, no schools, no shelter. Appeals for help keep multiplying, yet the displaced say they feel abandoned.
We call on the negotiators, on the President of the United States, on the State of Palestine, on other countries of the world, on the Arab states, and even on Israel to put an end to this suffering and begin rebuilding the Gaza Strip.
In these camps of death and despair, hope for a ceasefire grows ever thinner. Caught between hopelessness and will to survive, the displaced cling to one last wish: to still be alive when the truce finally comes, to start again from zero.
In the same context, occupation forces carried out a wave of arrests across towns and villages in the occupied West Bank on Sunday. According to the Palestinian news agency, 13 people, including a child, were detained during raids in Ramallah, Al Khalil, Salfait, and Nablus. And as the second anniversary of the Gaza war approaches, global protests are picking up steam, with growing calls to hold Western governments accountable for backing Israel's ongoing assault on Palestinians. Zahra Farjani reports.
As the second anniversary of the Zionist genocidal war on Gaza approaches, voices across the globe continue to rise, this time with a tangible impact on the Western countries backing the Zionist entity in its war against innocent Palestinians. Millions have taken to the streets around the world, from France, Italy, and the Netherlands to the UK, Turkey, Georgia, and Pakistan, calling for a tougher stance against the ongoing occupation and genocide in Gaza.
The problem with this plan is that it was made without the Palestinians, and we are a peace organization. We know that for peace you need justice and involvement of all parties involved, and you can't have a peace plan without the Palestinians. But for us now to have a ceasefire is the first objective, to have humanitarian aid, to free hostages and prisoners, but make sure there are guarantees there will be peace afterwards and there will be justice done for the Palestinians.
In cities like Ankara, Karachi, and Amsterdam, demonstrators expressed solidarity with those aboard the flotilla and demanded the immediate release of individuals detained by the Zionist entity.
We demand from the whole world that Hamas' proposal be accepted and that Palestine belongs to the Palestinians and that it should be under their authority. No talk of disarmament is acceptable. People all over the world want the freedom of the prisoners currently in the Freedom Flotilla and are talking about ending the famine and breaking the siege.
Even across Europe, where diplomatic gestures by certain leaders, such as France's President Macron, include recognizing the state of Palestine, yet still siding with Zionist entity. Segments of society, including dock workers in several ports, are taking direct action by blocking shipments to the Zionist regime. These acts of solidarity have already led to significant disruptions and economic losses.
I think that our government, especially here in the Netherlands, they have so much that they can do if they would want to. There's so much money, investments going to Israel, and we as our small country could already put more pressure on the Israeli government than we're doing right now. They're just talking. We're having a conversation. And apparently it has done nothing, and Israel's been able to continue their genocidal actions.
The growing movement of mass protests from Western populations is contributing to the isolation of the Zionist entity and undermining its propaganda machine. It also exposes the failure of Western media narratives that attempt to whitewash the brutal reality of the genocidal war in Gaza.
Moving on to another story back home, the Algerian cabinet meeting led by President of the Republic Abdelmadjid Tebboune approved the draft finance bill for 2026 on Sunday. President of the Republic Abdelmadjid Tebboune stressed steering financial policy to attract investment, maintain fiscal balance, and protect social transfers. He called for measures with real economic impact, avoiding new taxes that burden citizens, and urged a fairer, more efficient tax system to fight evasion and promote responsible financial behavior. Algeria and Oman have agreed to expand their energy cooperation to include petrochemicals and the sale of crude oil and liquefied natural gas. The deal follows talks between Algeria's hydrocarbons minister Mohamed Arqab, the Omani ambassador, and Abroad Energy Services. Both sides plan to set up a joint company for petroleum services like drilling, maintenance, and project management. Minister Arqab highlighted Algeria's push to boost the investment partnership and invited Omani firms to explore opportunities in Algeria's hydrocarbons and mining sectors. In another news, the UN's Under Secretary General for Political and Peace-Building Affairs, Rosemary DiCarlo, reaffirmed the organization's commitment to a political solution for Western Sahara. Meeting with Polisario Front Representative Sidi Mohamed Omar in New York on Saturday, DiCarlo stressed the need to restart talks under UN auspices and voiced concern over the ongoing political stalemate. Still with the same file, the Western Sahara Natural Resources Monitoring Association has slammed the EU's plan to renew its fishing deal with Morocco over occupied Western Sahara. The group says the move is illegal without the Sahrawi people's consent, accusing the EU of misrepresenting the origin of resources. It's calling on the European Parliament and civil society to act and warns that future agreements could face legal challenges in European and international courts. On a related note, the Coordinating Committee of Spanish Peasants and Ranchers says it will file a new lawsuit at the European Court of Justice to stop any attempts to exploit Sahrawi resources with Morocco. Andres Congura, head of Spain's largest agricultural union, told The Independent that the European Commission is violating international law and misleading millions of European farmers and consumers by labeling products from occupied Western Sahara as Moroccan.
Once again, the European Commission mocks farmers and European consumers by violating the ruling that invalidated the agricultural and fisheries agreement with Morocco.
Still with regional news, hundreds of thousands of Moroccans marched through Rabat on Saturday, renewing their call to end normalization with the Zionist entity. As demonstrations are spreading, some voices, including political parties and public figures, are now openly calling for regime change, pushing for a parliamentary monarchy, for instance, where the king reigns but does not rule. Here's the report by Salman Sibna.
As the royal palace continues to ignore protesters' demands, peaceful demonstrations have spread across major Moroccan cities. The second week of protest in Morocco opened with growing calls for a shift toward a parliamentary monarchy, one where the king reigns but does not rule. Demonstrators say this fundamental reform is key to political renewal, to building a more dignified social reality that reflects the aspirations of the Moroccan people.
On this occasion, we affirm that we are in need of genuine reforms and in need of a profound constitutional change that establishes a true preliminary system where the king reigns but doesn't rule, and where every official, regardless of their position or title, is held accountable.
Public anger is growing with mounting calls for urgent reform. In Rabat, thousands march under the slogan "The Moroccan people with one voice," uniting against the Mahsen regime and calling for an end to normalization with the Zionist entity.
Always here to put an end to normalization and call on state to cease all relations with this genocidal criminal entity, as these relations do not honor Morocco historically, religiously, nationally or humanly.
All normalization agreements with the Zionist entity must be revoked, and we must align ourselves with Gaza against the genocidal war being waged by the Zionist entity. We support the resistance and resilience of civilians, and we are against the displacement of the Palestinian people in Gaza.
As public anger swells, youth-led protest has intensified, joining mass marches rejecting Morocco's 5-year normalization with the Zionist entity. The country now finds itself caught between a defiant street and an unyielding regime. Yet many observers believe the tide is turning as the protest movement gathers momentum, a snowball that could ultimately challenge the monarchy itself.
Still with the same news, for the 8th straight night, Morocco's Generation Z movement kept up the pressure, hitting the streets in cities like Casablanca, Rabat, and Agadir. Protesters are calling for the government to step down, end corruption, and fix the country's health and education systems. It's a wave of anger that started back in mid-September and just keeps growing, now even reaching Moroccan communities across Europe.
The government must rise to the level of serious and responsible dialogue. It's essential to engage with the youth and avoid the pointless rhetoric we keep hearing from ministers in the media. There needs to be real dialogue and full accountability.
Meanwhile, on Saturday evening, Moroccan courts ordered the imprisonment of dozens of young people, including minors, for taking part in peaceful Generation Z marches demanding an end to corruption and better social services. In Tangier, 78 people were detained, while courts in Terdouat, Kantira, and Taza also sent dozens more to prison, including several minors. To another topical story, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky reported that Russia carried out 9 attacks using around 500 drones and over 50 missiles across multiple regions, resulting in 5 deaths. Lviv was hit hardest, with 4 killed and several wounded, while 1 died and 10 were injured in Zaporizhia. Zelensky criticized international allies for not responding to the strikes, calling for deterrent and real measures to halt Russian attacks that have targeted infrastructure and energy facilities.
Sadly, there is no strong response from the international community to what's happening. Constant escalation of these strikes. Russian President Vladimir Putin is doing it, and it seems to mock the West and its silence and lack of strong actions in response. Russia has rejected every proposal to end the war or even to halt the strikes.
Russian President Vladimir Putin warned that supplying Kiev with Tomahawk missiles would destroy relations between Moscow and Washington, calling it playing with fire. In a Sunday interview, he said sending weapons to Ukraine could undo recent positive trends, block a settlement, and drag NATO countries directly into the conflict.
There were issues raised, such as discussions about supply of new weapon systems, including long-range and high-precision systems like Tomahawks. I have already said that this will lead to the destruction of our relations, or at least the positive trends that have emerged in these relations.
Meanwhile, Poland has raised its military alert and scrambled warplanes along with Allied aircraft after Russian airstrikes hit areas of Ukraine near its border. The Army Operations Command says Polish and Allied jets are patrolling the skies, while air defenses and radar systems remain on maximum alert. Similarly, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius has accused Moscow of provocations after repeated drone sightings over European airports and facilities. In remarks to Handelsblatt, he condemned these airspace violations as deliberate Russian provocations. And now it's time to catch up on more international news stories in the News in Brief, this time with Karim Mustfawi. Let's follow.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi confirmed on Sunday that cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency is no longer feasible following the reimposition of sanctions and activation of the snapback mechanism by the UN. Araghchi also warned that the sanctions would only further complicate negotiations and hinder diplomatic efforts. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said his country has allocated strategic resources to respond to the buildup of U.S. military forces in the south without elaborating further. During a speech at a military equipment exhibition, Kim Jong-un pledged to take additional military measures in preparation for responding to the U.S. military buildup. In Canada, the government announced that Prime Minister Mark Carney will visit Washington on Tuesday for talks with U.S. President Donald Trump on tariffs. The visit aims to address shared economic and security priorities as part of a new bilateral relationship. French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu plans to introduce a tax targeting individuals earning over €250,000 annually, or €500,000 for couples. According to L'Équipe, Lecornu, Macron's fifth Prime Minister in under 2 years, aims to raise an additional €3 billion in tax revenue next year through these measures.
And finally in our news, at Expo 2025 in Osaka, Japan, Algeria took center stage during its Destination Week, offering visitors an immersive journey through its rich heritage. The Algeria Pavilion showcased interactive tourism guides, sustainable energy projects, modern infrastructure, and traditional crafts, leaving guests impressed by the country's cultural depth and history. The exhibition highlighted Algeria's diverse identity and growing potential as a leading African destination.
I've never been to Algeria, but I love to visit many countries. So I first saw many traditional things of Algeria today, and it was very beautiful. And I wish I could go someday. I was moved to all the clothes there and the jewelry. Yeah, and I heard that there's a dance, traditional dance. So I want to see how beautiful it is.
I think it's really cool to see all the different countries at the expo and learning about countries that I don't really know very much about. I didn't even know where Algeria was before I walked into the to this pavilion, but it's really cool. It seemed really interesting. All of the lights and stuff and the culture that was learnt about in here is really good. I got a scarf and a pin. So yeah, it's just really interesting to learn about all the fashion and the culture and the language, and sort of fit that into my perception of like North Africa.
And with this, we reach the end of our news for tonight. To catch up on any part you missed or get the latest updates, you can always visit our social media platforms. On behalf of all 24 News team, I'm Karim Fassekri signing off. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye.